Hey guys, how's it going? Alex Scott here with HigherHertz.com. Thank you guys so much for checking out another one of our video reviews. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at this adorably colorful guy right behind me. This is the PreSonus ATOM SQ MIDI controller. Now, this is a really unique product that PreSonus released not too long ago. It came out just a couple of months ago, kind of towards the end of 2020. And when I very first saw it, I was really intrigued and really excited because I'm an avid PreSonus guy. You guys can see I use the Studio Live 32S console. I work in Studio 1.5 pretty exclusively. I subscribe to PreSonus Sphere. I'm a huge fan of a lot of PreSonus's products. And so when they announced this MIDI controller, I said, oh man, that's kind of the final piece of the puzzle in terms of my production workflow. And indeed, since I've picked it up, it's become something that I use almost every day in all kinds of contexts. So throughout the rest of this video, we're going to take a look at a close-up of the unit. We're going to go over all the buttons and features and kind of show you guys what exactly it does. We're going to go into this super deep and tight integration that it has with Studio 1.5. I'm going to show you guys some of my favorite kind of couple features and how I integrate them into my workflow, how they work really well for me. Hopefully that'll give you guys a great idea of whether or not you would like to pick one up. Now, before we dive into the meat of talking about the ATOM SQ, don't forget to subscribe, click that notification bell if you enjoyed this video and want to be kept up to date with our new content. If you guys have any subscriptions for other pieces of gear that you would like us to take a look at, please leave them in the comments down below. And if you are a maker of gear or have a product that you distribute or something that you want us to take a look at, definitely reach out because we love looking at and playing with new gear and showing you guys all about it. So without further ado, let's jump into a close-up of the ATOM SQ and take a look at all of the features. Okay guys, so first let's take a look at the ATOM SQ, which I have here on my desk, all nice and ready to go. And this is more or less what you see on the unit when you have it just connected to Studio One, but you don't have any specific instruments pulled up. Now again, we're going to get more into the integration side of things a little bit later in the video, but I just wanted to first kind of start by taking a look at the overall construction and layout. So as you can see, kind of the biggest feature is these 2 rows of 16 pads. Now these are pressure and touch sensitive, velocity sensitive, all that stuff, but they are just tap pads. They do not depress. They're really nice, kind of hard rubberized surface, you know, a lot like any other kind of beat pad or beat controller you have seen around. And overall build quality, by the way, is fantastic. So let's just say that and get it out of the way right now. Again, we've got 2 full rows of 16 pads. You can see that they're slightly offset, and we'll get to why that is in just a moment. 16 pads, total of 32, 16 in each layer. This one we have labeled 1 through 16. We have kind of these delineating marks right here. And so you guys are already probably going to recognize that as very much in line with like 808 style sequencing, right? Where we have each pad kind of represents a 16th note. We can build beats that way. And that's the first thing that you can do really well with this controller. And that, by the way, is my favorite way to create beats, is this kind of step sequencer approach. And so the ATOM SQ is perfectly designed for that, really ideally laid out. Again, we're going to get into that a little bit more when we get into working with Impact, which is the drum sampler built into Studio One, but that's kind of the main feature here. Now, the other thing, getting back to the reason why they're slightly offset, the other thing this can do is that actually transitions into representing a keyboard as well. So some of these lights will dim and it'll show you the pattern of the keyboard to make it nice and easy to play any kind of melodic synth or patch as MIDI instrument. So again, we're going to see that stuff in detail in a minute here when we get into looking at Studio One alongside this, but that is the reason they're offset. So it kind of does double duty. We have plenty of room for triggering samples if we want to, you know, play stuff. We also have a full system for doing step sequencing, traditional 16-step sequencing, and then this thing can also turn into a keyboard, which is really handy, and that's why I have it right here on my desk in front of me, so I can set it into this keyboard mode and just, you know, noodle out ideas real quick. Over here we have a plus and a minus key. These are going to function as pitch bend, and it is, you know, again, it's pressure sensitive and velocity sensitive, so the harder you press, it's going to actuate that pitch bend. Then we have this really nice touch strip, very responsive. We have 8 endless rotary encoders, which can be assigned, of course, to anything. And by the way, you know, as with any MIDI controller, all of this stuff is assignable. It does kind of have a preset way that it works in Studio One, which is really well laid out, really logical. But you can, of course, if you choose to use this with another piece of software, you can reassign any of this. Over here, you can see we have A through H, these smaller buttons. And these work the same way that if you ever used a machine from Native Instruments, works in a very, very similar way, where in Impact, which again is the drum sampling plugin within Studio One, these are going to select your different groups or different kits within your instance of Impact. That's when you're working with Impact. When you're working with melodic synths, this is actually how you're going to select your octave. The octave range of the sort of keyboard. And that's a really interesting approach, because normally you just have an octave plus or minus, but here they have these buttons doing double duty. I actually really, really like it because it allows you to make larger jumps in case you need to. But, you know, again, we're saving a little bit of space. They're doing double duty, which I really, really like. Here we have a basic kind of transport, stop, play, record, and metronome on and off. Again, this is assignable to any DAW, but it comes preset up for Studio One. We also, it's a good time to mention, have a shift key over here, which, as you can see, when I press that, the layout kind of changes. And so now we have some kind of assignable buttons here, and we have alternate functions for our transport. So stop becomes undo, play becomes loop, the record button becomes save, and then the metronome button becomes count in. So instead of turning our normal click on and off, we can enable count in on and off. Again, that's mapped within Studio One. Moving over from there, we have this beautiful little display, and this is really a section that's going to be more designed strictly for the integration with Studio One. And this is where this thing becomes an absolute powerhouse, because most of the functions that exist within Studio One can be controlled from this little section. So you have song, instrument, editor, and user. Song is going to be kind of your global controls. So we have tempo, we have loop selection, we have zoom functionality, where we can zoom in and out. Again, we're going to see some of this when we move into the computer in a second. But the idea here, then we can page over and select, you know, pull up our console, pull up our inspector, control individual track volume, control which track we have selected. We can control solo, mute, record arm for each track. Moving down into instruments, we can do a ton of stuff within our instrument. We can browse presets. We can do chord effects. We can add arpeggio, MIDI, different MIDI effects like arpeggiation and stuff. We can also create patterns, which we're going to look at with Impact in a second. Moving down into editor, this is where we're going to edit our patterns and edit our MIDI data. We have tons and tons of options there in terms of transposition, nudging, velocity controls, turning snap on and off, quick quantize. And then user, we can configure to do a lot of different things. It does come pre-configured with some really, really handy options within Studio One, but that's where you're going to kind of find your custom settings. So now let's go ahead and move into the computer. So you guys can see I've got a Studio One session pulled up here, and we just have two instruments loaded in. We're going to be using these to kind of look at either side of what the Atom SQ does. We have Impact, which again is the drum sampling software here in Studio One, and then we have an instance of Presence, which is kind of the all-purpose synth situation in Studio One. And right away, when we pull up Impact and when we arm it, you can see now the colors have all changed on our Atom SQ. And if you look at the actual pads within Impact, you can see the colors correspond perfectly. So we have red for this kick, we have blue for a rim shot, we have a snare and a clap, which are sort of orange, and those colors are reflected up here. So now from here, we could, of course, just hit record, turn on our metronome, hit record. Bang out a pattern. We could then select this, go into our editor, hit quantize. That's going to quantize everything. Go back to our song controls, and we've just laid down a simple loop. So that's our first option for kind of creating a beat or a pattern. But if you guys are familiar with Studio One 5, you know that there is actually a step sequencer kind of pattern function built in to our drum instrument tracks. And that's where I love the Atom SQ and how I love to use it to create beats. So under our kind of instrument setting here, you can see we have this button that is assigned to add pattern. So if we get rid of what we just did, we can add pattern, and that pattern shows up on the screen. Open our editor here, and we have a classic old school, almost FL Studio-like representation of our beat that we're working with. And so from here, we click down to editor. You can see our layout changes again. And this, we've got our kick drum selected. So here we can go boom, and then maybe boom. We can get our snare drum, and now we're composing exactly as you would on, more of an 808 style machine. Where's our hi-hat? There we go. Hi-hat. And so we've got that, right? Loop that out a couple of times. Turn our loop on here just to make things easy. So you're like, okay, cool. Maybe that's my starting idea for a beat. We can hit duplicate variation. And now you can see on screen, we have variation number 2. Let's add maybe just another layer to the snare in this variation number 2. And then within our edit window up here, we now have variation 1 and variation 2. And we can switch back and forth between them. And then let's say we want, our first bar to be variation 1 and then our second bar to be variation 2. So you guys can already see I'm already building out different variations on loops, and it's all controllable from right here. Then, of course, we could go into a B kit or kind of our B sound bank. If we wanted to add yet another kit, we could go down to C, open another preset. We can control all of that with the different group buttons here on the Atom SQ. And then everything that we're doing from creating patterns, creating pattern variations, we're doing here on the Atom SQ itself. That's really just a quick overview of how it can work with Impact and how I like to work with it within Impact. Really fast, really, really creative, really intuitive. And again, it gets you back to this very hands-on feel of creating drum patterns and creating sequences and all this kind of stuff. It's not a bunch of clicking. It's not a bunch of dragging and quantizing and keyboard shortcuts and stuff. You get to get hands-on with the device, and it really starts to feel like a real drum machine with really limitless potential. And this is great, again, especially if you're a subscriber to PreSonus Sphere, which is their new subscription-based model that gets you Studio 1.5, it gets you Notion. We've got a whole video here on the channel about Studio One Sphere, so definitely take a look at that if you're not familiar with what it is. But it basically just gets you access to all the software PreSonus has ever made, which is really, really amazing. And one of the things that also comes with is a ton of killer kits for Impact. So this is most of the stuff that comes with just the basic version of Studio One, but then we have all of these killer expansions. We have all these different MVP loop kits. We have Gold Baby drums, which I use all the time. Gold Baby is where you're going to find like your MPCs, your 808s, your 909s, DMX, all the kind of classic analog drum machines. Those are going to be in Gold Baby drums. That's probably the number one thing that I use in here. There's just a huge variety of really, really great sounding kits that work really in any style. And then, a whole other step of depth is that we've got our rotary knobs up here, which we can freely assign to cutoffs, attacks, decays, anything that you would want to kind of get a little bit, even further hands-on with your sound, pitch them around, adjust the filters and stuff. That can all be assigned. And indeed, with some of the Impact kits, it's pre-assigned for each individual sound. So as you move through, this knob is going to become your cutoff for each individual sound. It's really amazing, and it really helps it to feel, again, like a tactile, physical drum machine or instrument. So that's working with drums and Impact. Now, let's go ahead and jump over to EP. Now you can see again, our whole layout has changed, and now we have white keys and black keys. And another really great thing here is that we definitely have velocity sensitivity if we want it. But we also just have a quick kind of shortcut to full velocity. This is really great when working with something like string patches, where you want all the notes to be a specific consistent velocity, and this is adjustable. You can assign, say, the touch strip to velocity after the fact, and really create kind of a whole custom setup of exactly how you want to use it as a keyboard controller. So where I find this incredibly useful is if I am working on a track that I'm mostly like just mixing, for instance, like let's say it's a rock track and it's mostly guitars, bass, drums, real instruments, but I just have a quick idea for like a little synth hook or a little piano hook or something. And I don't want to, call out to a session musician or bring somebody in and mic up a piano, whatever. And I don't even necessarily, I just want to try something out. I don't want to jump over to my full size MIDI controllers and deal with that. I can just pull something up and I've got a really easy, quick keyboard I can just try out an idea on. I also really like it for scoring when I'm doing string stuff because it has this full velocity feature. I can set it up to really, really easily and really quickly demo and audition different string ideas and different arrangement ideas. Again, I don't have to move over to my full-size controllers. I can just try out a few ideas here, get something going, maybe punch in a few quick chords, work with it, and then as I lush out an idea, when I'm ready to, I can move over to my full MIDI controllers. It just speeds things up to that extent or to that degree rather. So incredibly well thought out. And I love that it's got this kind of back and forth, not modularity isn't quite the right word, but just the ability to swap back and forth so smoothly where we're laying down a keyboard part and then boom, we're back over to working with patterns and all this kind of stuff. We jump into our edit here and get back into working with, if we want to make changes to our patterns that we built here, we can do all the different variations on the fly, and then we can go even deeper. I'm only touching on, maybe 5% of what's in this, little windowed area here, or little screen area in terms of what we can do, because we can go in and do whatever we want. We can set up loops. We can, again, we can do zoom. We can set our tempo. We hit tempo, we can bring it up. Let's say we want to hear the track at 130 BPM. There's no more clicking. There's no more typing in numbers. It's all right here. We can create and move around markers. We can turn on and off our console, our inspector. We can solo individual channels. We can mute individual channels. Anything that you need to do really in Studio One can all be done hands-on from right here. From gross transport control stuff, undo, everything we just went over in terms of mixer controls and stuff. It is so full-featured and it is so deeply integrated with Studio One. It just makes everything faster. It makes everything easier. Makes everything a lot more creative and fun and inspiring. It's become a huge and very critical part of my workflow overall. Okay, guys, so there you go. There's a good general overview of the Atom SQ, some of the use cases that I like to use it for. The thing that blows me away about this, like I've said, if it were kind of just a standalone MIDI controller, which you can use it as, it would be fine. But when you get into this super deep integration with Studio One, the fact that it integrates with Impact so tightly, the fact that you can do that kind of classic step sequencing style of beat creation, which is my personal favorite, that's how I love to work, it really, really makes it amazing. And the fact that they've implemented that kind of keyboard feature where you can switch it over to more of a keyboard view and use it to play kind of melodies and stuff, it makes browsing presets for synth patches super, super easy. It makes just composing, if you just have a quick little melody that you want to throw in on the fly, you don't have to move to your full MIDI controller. You can just do it right there from the pads. Incredibly cool and incredibly useful little device. It's become a really, really integral part of how I produce, especially when it comes to hip hop, EDM, anything like that. It's really sped up my workflow and built really, really well. Overall, I think PreSonus has knocked it out of the park with the Atom SQ. So current retail price on this guy is about $250 USD, $249.95. You can find it from any major retailers and indeed buy it directly from PreSonus themselves. And I definitely recommend that you do if you're a Studio One user. That's like the key kind of takeaway for me, and the key point with this guy is if you're working in other DAWs, it's going to be just another MIDI controller. And in fact, given the design, I think it would actually be a little bit complicated to set up, as well as a little bit limited trying to use it with another program. But it is really designed for that deep integration with Studio One. So if you use Studio One, if you're a PreSonus Sphere subscriber, it's going to be a phenomenal solution for you guys to really, really easy just spit out beats, spit out ideas, have some really great hands-on control on Impact. If you guys like using Impact, I certainly do. It really checks a lot of those boxes, specifically for Studio One users. So if that's you, 2 thumbs up, 5 thumbs up, 1,000,000 stars. I think it's awesome. I use it all the time. Highly, highly recommended. But what do you guys think? Do you dig the Atom SQ? Do you have the original Atom? PreSonus, before the Atom SQ, had it was just called the Atom. It was more of a kind of 16 pad square beat controller. That was pretty popular. Whatever your thoughts about it may be, if it looks interesting, if you've used it before, if you want to use it, please let me know in the comments down below. Again, if you have any other pieces of gear that you would like us to take a look at, please let us know about those as well. Always love hearing from you. If you have not yet subscribed to the Higher Hertz channel, click that subscribe button, smash the notification bell to be kept up to date with our new content. And of course, if you want to give this video a like or a share because you dug it, we would really appreciate that as well. But in any case, my name is Alex Scott with higherhertz.com. Be sure to check out our website for tons of great articles, tips, and tricks on musical instruments and recording gear. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you again in the next video.